Alright, good morning. Part 3, Spontaneous Fighting Ability. So there was an incident when I was in the Marine Corps, and it was after a night of a lot of drinking. And it was overseas at a base that I'm not going to tell you where it's at, and I'm not going to mention names, and I have to leave some things out because for all I know that information is still classified, even though this occurred quote unquote in my off time. But it was during a desert storm, and it was, I can tell you what country it was in. I was in the country of Crete, right? Crete, which is a Greek territory really, but don't tell it to the Cretans. And so, I got back to the barracks, and there was an altercation that occurred inside the barracks with two other Marines who decided to assault me, and quickly escalated to two of my roommates jumping in, and now it was a 3-on-2, and I thought it was over when it was over. But then when it was over, there was a knock on the door, and I think it might have been the NCOIC. In our barracks were one-story wooden tin shack, right? Not a Quonset hut, but a shack type thing. And they're like shore patrols here to see you. So I went outside, and my commanding officer's there, and the platoon sergeant is there. They had been drinking as well, but this drinking that I did before the fight was off base. And the platoon commander and NCOIC, our staff sergeant, had been drinking. Right across from our barracks is an E-club for the naval base. Alright? And then there's like an open field the size of a football field, and across from it is the naval police headquarters, and they were naval personnel, and they had a Marine cadre staff sergeant training them, and they were in their camis and they had their pistols and everything, and they said, you're being charged with assault. And I'm like, I was defending myself. Now, mind you, these two guys were both over 6 foot something. One guy I think might have been like 6'4", big country boy from Indiana or something, and the other guy was taller, leaner, kind of like a blonde-ish Jeff Goldblum, if that makes any sense. And earlier that night at the event, I'd actually been talking to them. They were on duty at this event. Earlier, a couple times, I'd struck up conversations with them. We had kind of a cordial, friendly relationship, and that probably helped the events that happened later stop me from getting shot. So they said, we have to arrest you. You're being charged with assault. And I'm like, I was defending myself. But you know what? I'll submit. I'll go with you. You hold me in the pen, and that's fine. We'll settle this. We'll settle this the proper way. And they each grabbed an arm and began to put it behind me. I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, we got to handcuff you. I'm like, no, you're not. I was defending myself. And before I knew what happened, I dropped in a horse stance and put my hand out, kind of like palm up, so that my horse stance is behind him, and my hand is in front of him. I remember dropping my elbow, turning my palm, and throwing him across my leg. And then I remember pivoting, grabbing this guy, and doing kind of like a hip toss. And it happened blindingly fast. And I stood back, and they're both on the floor looking at me like on their butts, literally hands on the ground, like, what the fuck just happened? I said, look, I was just defending myself. I'm not a criminal. You're not handcuffing me. I'm going to walk over to your station, and I'm going to turn myself in. You can you can follow me if you want. You can come with me if you want. And I don't know where that came from, right? And I started to turn and walk. Now, mind you, this event we'd been drinking at, apparently there was ouzo, and there's a type of ouzo that has opium in it. I think that had been in the mix unbeknownst to us, and that probably had something to do with all the weird behavior. All right, I think we would have all failed a piss test if it had been applied. So I start walking, and these guys run after me, and they grab me again, and they start to handcuff me, and I do the same technique again. And then I decide to run, and then now they're running, and I turn around to see them running at me, and I had never done this before, but I remember being told, being trained in the way of the sphere to, if there's multiple attackers, always move to the flank, look at the throat of someone, don't look at their eyes, look at the throat or the chest as they're coming at you, which helps you react faster and track the movements through peripheral vision. And that same thing Miyamoto Musashi said. And I remember button hooking to the side, slamming my palms into one guy and literally running him to the other, and then they both fell. And this continued. All right? I would tangle with them and throw them around different ways. And I remember doing a lot of stuff that was like Aikido. I remember at one point being taken down by one guy. He grabbed me from behind like a bear hug, and I shoulder tossed him, but I went down with him. And then as I started to get up, another guy came to me, and I grabbed the guy's Achilles tendon heel, put my hand on his kneecap and shoved him back, and he fell, and I got up. And I remember the big guy getting up, "Hey buddy, look, I'm trying not to hurt you, man." And I was like, "I'm trying not to hurt either of you. If you guys would stop, I'd walk with you." And it just continued, and eventually they got me handcuffed. And I was like, all right. But then, clear as day, I remembered when I was like 11 taking Shotokan Karate, learning Heian Sandan. You got the moves where the hands are on the hips and you're landing in horse stance and I was taught a deeper bunkai where as you put the foot down in horse stance, it's behind him and this is in front of him. And it was actually shown how you could throw people with your hands tied behind you or to your side. And I began to apply Heian Sandan techniques, and I threw the guy, and then I swept this guy, kind of like with the returning wave sweep motion of Teki Shodan, right? Which I'd learned the kata and some of the application, and Shotokan level bunkai is very superficial, at least at that level. But even then, some tidbits crept through, right? And I threw these guys with my hands behind my back, and then the big guy grabbed me from behind, and I shoulder tossed him again, but this time properly because he fell and I didn't. And eventually they grabbed me, and they dragged me to the door, and I got to the door, and as they went to take me in the building, as they lifted me, I put my feet up and I put one foot on each side of the door, and they pushed, and I dropped into my horse stance, but I'm sideways in space, and then I straightened my leg and arched my back, and they fell back, and I did a backward roll and stood up. And instead of trying to run away from the door, I wanted to go in the door first, but they grabbed me again, and they tried to force me, and I blocked with my feet. Then they turned me around and dragged me, on my back head first, and I got in there, and I actually continued fighting them. I'm amazed I didn't get shot. Don't try this, folks. But I kind of had a personal friendship with these two guys. And, maybe me telling them I didn't want to hurt them, right, had something to do with it. Don't try this with the cops today. They will effing shoot you, especially if you're black or what they call brown, or, If you're not a white guy and you're doing this, you're gonna get shot. Okay? And probably if you're a white guy. Cops today are very different, and these were, two naval cops. And the funny thing is, I did not get charged by them because to give you a background, the staff sergeant and some of the NCOs just straight up didn't like me as a person. I was outspoken and I was very different, and I tended not to hang with any of them, and sometimes the NCOs would fraternize with their troops, and they had like their own fan club, and I was not part of anyone's fan club. And so they just didn't like me, and some of my sergeants, black and Latino, liked me, and went to bat for me. And one sergeant basically said, it took them 25 minutes just to get you in that building. If they charge you with all that, they have to admit that. They have to admit a freakish level of incompetence. And so they're not charging you with anything. Whoa. And there was other improprieties going on, and I wound up being charged with nothing by anybody. Right? I can't tell you all the things that happened because, it was a long time ago, guys. It was literally Desert Storm. We're talking like 1991. Okay? How long ago was that? Let's see. 91? 2001? 2011? We're talking over 30 years ago. And at the beginning of the Forever Wars, right? There had been a lot of improprieties leading up to this, and basically I said, fine, I'll blab, and I request a court-martial, and I'll see how many careers I can ruin. And they transferred me out to another unit, and rest of Desert Storm passed without incident. I got with a really good bunch of guys, 4th Platoon, the Joker Platoon. Lieutenant Choi, fantastic leader, also not a white guy, that helps. Fantastic guys, and if I met my 4th Platoon compatriots today, I'd give them all a hug, and I'm like, I don't drink, but let me buy you a drink, because you guys watch my back. But that's spontaneousness. I never practiced very many Aikido type techniques, and never formally trained judo. Learned a technique here and there, but it was a whole strategy that just spontaneously came out of me in a moment of need, in that no mind, from that well of subconsciousness, the natural law, if you will, right? I came into my own sphere, to borrow the terminology of the way of the sphere. I accessed the hidden potential of myself. Now, that's part 3. More to follow.